The temperature of the dark room dropped the moment I stood in the doorway. I saw the outline of her resting body nestled beneath the covers, and her eyes locked on mine in fear, all in an unknowing invitation. Her mouth widened, and her silent scream into the night only led me forward, feeding me, invigorating me, encouraging me to feast on that pretty little soul of hers. At barely a crawl, the slower I moved, the greater the rising dread was. A few minutes felt like an eternity, with no slowing down. I saw my reflection in her eyes, a blurred, formless shadow with no warmth inside it, and I sensed her greatest fear. Ah, there it was. I morphed into a figure of an old crone, with a withered, gaunt frame, hunched over with long, twisted fingers, with equally long fingernails, pitch-black crevices from plucked-out eyes, and a toothy, leering grin while I floated over. My skin was green, blotchy like the grave, and rotten with a mess of white hair around my face. My dress was a tattered, black funeral gown, decorated with the blood and bones of children. It flowed behind me, leaving a trail of grave dust, and I wondered what trauma caused her to see me this way. An abusive grandmother? A crippling fear of old age? Or listening to other people's stories late at night of visits from strange beings? It didn't concern me. All that mattered was the feast I would now consume. Standing beside the bed, leaning over her, staring down at my latest victim, and I could sense her internal screaming, her soul itching to escape the flesh prison that kept it contained. She called for help, and her sleeping partner beside her was oblivious, caught inside her own dream. Opening my mouth to feed on her life force, the first breath or bite was the most devastating. It tore into her soul, and I saw her hopes, dreams, and passions, all of her potential futures now in jeopardy. The negative ones were the hook that held me there, only amplifying. Her torso arced painfully while she stared at me, her body no longer hers, while her neck pressed downward into the pillow, her body's foolish attempt to escape. Invisible to the human eye, more of a feeling than a physical manifestation, unless it was inside the body. The electricity moved through my form, feeling a lingering burst of life before it faded, and I felt the suffering she felt during the course of her life. It highlighted it, increasing the intensity, and the positive memories receded. An otherwise happy and healthy person would soon wither. They never fell asleep on their own. Rather, they'd collapse with exhaustion, their body's last-ditch attempt at protecting themselves, and I'd leave them before dawn. When the sun rose, my power would wane, and during the human waking hours, I'd slumber with my belly full with the life essence inside, nestled inside the walls of the home I currently resided in, the damp crawl space where insects and rodents made their home. There'll be more time to feed tomorrow, hiding somewhere damp, dark, and rarely visited by humans. I'd rest and go quiet, listening to the conversations that took place inside the home, planning on who my next victim would be, or whether I should continue to drain my current target until I reached the optimum point. Filled with fear, unable to function, so exhausted their waking world and the dream one would become one. It was rare to reach this point. Mortal bodies were feeble and could easily slip into death. When they'd sleep, unable to move, and could no longer respond to the whispers of their loved ones. A partner, a parent, sibling, or a child. Each would attempt to draw out the positive memories and weaken my hold over the target. In times past, they'd be completely bedridden, barely able to leave the room they were in. Bedbound, perfect for feeding, and now they're sent to hospitals for their care. Places littered with lost spirits, predatory demonic forces, and even worse, the high financial cost of a sick relative. There were too many mouths to feed, and besides, I prefer the quiet. Each night I would wait until their bodies would linger between sleep and the wakened world, when their bodies were numb and immobile, yet their minds could see, react, and fear. Unable to run, unable to scream. The helplessness aided me in their fears. I needed the latter in order to feed, to sink my teeth into them. If it happened once, they would write it off as a weird dream, a chance occurrence. Twice, they would grow suspicious, wondering whether they were too stressed from work or life events. By the third night, they'll begin to expect a visitor. They cast a glance at either corner of their room, at the window, doorway, or by their bedside, waiting, dreading. Sometimes, my hand would reach from under their bed, teasing them that I'd been there all along. Eventually, they will prolong how long it would take them to go to bed, staying up late on their phone or watching TV. Perhaps even avoiding sleeping in their bed altogether, procrastinating what should have been a place of rest and rejuvenation, corrupting the safe. Most would tell their partners of their nightmares, or worse, me, a crone, an imp, the Hat Man, an alien, or an array of others based on their fears. Yet only my victim could see me, feel me, unless they had the gift of sight. I'd watch while their partners would slowly pull away, either from not understanding their affliction, or doubting their partner's sanity. Sometimes a partner would simply drift away the moment it became too difficult, and it only made my task easier. Their bedroom now with a sharp chill, even with the heat on or the weather outside was humid, and all the comforts of modern life should work. They'd curl up under the covers, wrapping it tight around their body and turning off the light. Their eyes would grow heavy, one slow blink after another, and finally, they would be on the brink. Each shadow a potential adversary. Would it grow into a living nightmare? I remembered the foolish soft prayers for assistance, some to angels and others to gods who never came to assist them, forsaking them. Whether it was due to a lapse in judgment, a punished sin, or the Divine One was indifferent was left to the imagination. A near silent hope for salvation, only to be dashed by my appearance. No god could whisper to grant them safety, and thus far, I found no being capable of keeping me at bay. Perhaps my victims longed for punishment. My power would only grow when they reached out for help, escalating until I was able to appear during the day when she was exhausted, a hand resting on the kitchen table while she hoped the coffee would kick in. Her hands would twitch, dark circles under her eyes, and her mind riddled with confusion and fear. A spill of a drink here, leaving the stove on there, all resulting in doubt. I remembered various psychics being invited into the home, walking through to find the source of the evil. Why would I make it easy for her to rid herself of me? Does she not know I am part of her now? A useless trinket would be given, placed at one corner or another to protect the family and to keep my kind away. A dimwit would light a candle, give me an offering to appease me. Why would a flicker of flame feed me when I had a whole tasty morsel to devour? Frauds, tricksters, charlatans. Only one knew what I was, and still, she took the money and left my victim to her fate. Now, instead of standing over her, I'd sit on her chest, her breathing labored, and her heartbeat growing faster, all to cause her body to weaken while opening my mouth wide to accept her life force, gorging myself, savoring it, and watching the change in their bodies. A grey hair or several, a wrinkle there, while muscle wasted away, all long before their time. Each time, bringing them deliciously close to the brink of death, and never taking too much. Always on the edge, always on the brink. The thread between was a delicate dance. Between sleep and the waking world, there are other beings that linger, and humanity should watch out for. I have haunted humanity since they wandered from their caves into the earliest villages. Over time they built busy cities. When a tower fell and humanity was scattered to different lands, whispering words they could not understand. The rise of the magic of technology was a particular treat to witness. The humans feared the dark, where predators of flesh walked and the spirits were all too willing to feed. The shadows now kept at bay, while the dim light of their devices messed with their ability to sleep. My story and warnings told in mere fragments of how best to keep me away from feeding, only to be ignored, and it allowed me to feed and roam unchallenged, the whisper of my existence being just a story, or a scientific explanation allowed me to move. Tiredness, a reaction to trauma, night terrors, all perfect cover stories. This time, there was one who came to the house with knowledge of what I was, who I am. I sensed her the moment she stepped over the threshold. She knew I lurked beneath the floorboards, a faint voice echoing out, "I know who you are." Within an instant, she sprinkled herbs around the home that irritated my very being. However, most of her attention was focused around the primary bedroom, surrounding the bed that had become my feeding space. A combination of herbs and symbols kept me away from the bed, so I could not feed, and a large mirror where I witnessed myself, for the first time since creation, causing me to flee. Seeing my face for the first time, what I was, what I had become, I had to escape. While I did so, all I had gained was stripped away from me, leaving naught but a near-empty shell. Retreating through a crack in the door, I tried to find another in the family to feed on, but they too were protected, and only moving on allowed me to seek out nourishment. I flew in the air, down streets, and underneath unguarded door cracks, on a quest to find the right one. Frightened, drained, with no refuge, cats and dogs kept me outside with their natural protection. Over a period of time it could be twisted. They'd alert their oblivious owners who would attempt to silence them, completely unaware of their sacred duty. If I was healthy, I could have driven them to madness, but in my current state, it was impossible. Each home had a pet who drove me away. I needed to feed. I was weak, desperate for something to sustain myself. My form barely clung together, and all I wanted to do was feast. Selecting the next location was difficult. Too many people too deep in sleep or untroubled to be fed upon. They were happy, far too strong for the time being. Thus, I moved to the next location, traveling down streets until I found the first house open to me. I could hear verbal fighting and the strain between the parents. Their eldest sibling was awake and talking to their friends while listening to music. The middle wasn't home. And the third, the youngest child, silent and unable to speak their mind over their fears, curled up in bed, covering his ears to keep the screaming at bay. Youth and fear, two things that were irresistible. I barely waited until the child was asleep, lurching forward and paralyzing him. I took too much when I fed. The child saw me as a black shadow with no distinct outline. No face, and I had no time to discern why. After feeding, the warmth of the sun drove me to rest, and hiding inside the walls, I heard the frightened whispers asking for help, and the child was silenced by already frustrated parents. It only permitted me to feed freely. Whenever I desired, I stepped through and would take my fill, only to move to each member of the family. A true feast. Their secrecy allowed me to move through them. The second time, there was already another being inside the house, its presence naught but a void. Darkness itself, older than even I am, timeless and deathless, knowing better than to attempt to stand against one I couldn't beat in combat. I steered clear of that house and those inside, not wishing to gain an understanding how they managed to barter with that entity. I fled to one of the nearby houses, only to see the other entity watching me through the window. It had been many long years since I felt fear. I kept moving to different homes in the quest of finding fresh territory to feed. I'd see a sleeping victim, curled up in bed, with faint artificial light peering, that cast shadows I'd move through, always appearing in the doorways, creeping over to the stiff victim when I lowered my mouth over them, only to realize that I was not alone. It stood at the doorway, watching us. No shape, no form, not even a shadow cast on the floor. Mortal eyes could never see it. Was this karma? A source of divine or infernal retribution? A being born through countless feedings? I expected the entity to attack, to drive me from my feast in a territorial dispute. And instead, terror flowed from it, effortless. And the house itself morphed around it, reshaped. I withdrew. With the strength regained, I figured it would be best for me to take my leave. It blocked me, unable to disappear nor slink away with my tail between my legs. It wanted me to feed, opening my mouth to consume. The fear letting the life force flow readily, and the physical signs were direct. A child was the perfect target. You could feed gradually over the course of their life, with no issues, but now, the child aged rapidly. Its hair went grey and fell out. Plump cheeks were replaced with a gaunt, near-skeletal look, and just in time, I remembered to release before the final breath was taken. I knew I had reduced human lifespans multiple times, but to see one taken so swiftly, so directly concerned me. It had a hunger greater than my own, feasting on all that came into contact. It didn't matter if they were human, or the dead, or born before time. I was satisfied, yet this entity was not. Feasting without halting would kill the mortal far, far too quickly. I felt it urge me to feed more. And when I resisted, it burned me. I moved on to the next child's bedroom, a little boy. This one was already asleep, in a deep, comfortable rest. And despite my techniques to attempt to awaken him, a sharp chill on the back of his neck, whispering the child's name, tapping on the walls or shaking the bed frame. Nothing worked, and the child slept straight through. I felt haste while it watched from the doorway, insisting that I continue, and fearful, I stood over the child, parting its lips with my finger, and every attempt to feed was fruitless. There was no spark, no connection that allowed me to get close. Without being able to feed through me, it started to feed on me. I tried to make an escape, only to be sealed inside, and now forced to see all the faces of the lives I had drained. They were, and are, food. A shadow would be the wrong name for what I became, but close enough. A stranger saved me, though inadvertently. The entity was trapped inside a glass jar during a cleansing. The chanting filled the space, and it was encircled with a bright light. It burned. I was being beckoned to leave but could not, since I knew I would be no match for this magician. I made my escape as soon as I was able. That was when the electric lights first became common. An elderly woman lay on her deathbed, surrounded by members of her family, children and grandchildren, waiting for her heart to stop to get their hands on the family wealth, nearly willing to take matters into their own hands, all to get a hold of the inheritance. Nightmares plagued her for months, a truth she was unwilling to acknowledge what was happening around her, and knowing the end was near, and praying she would enter heaven. Gasping for breath, and with the final death rattle, she saw me as a reaper clutching coins, by my many hands protruding from my body, a grotesque skeletal figure with a swollen belly, and I barely took a breath, and she passed away. Considering her circumstance, it was a mercy killing. None of her children possessed guilt nor shame at their actions. When they slept, each of them curled up comfortably in their beds, their dreams happy and filled with hope for the future. How they were going to spend their new wealth, not a care in the world about their greed. And if I remained here, I would starve. Journeying to the next home, I found one I had been to previously. Long ago, when electricity was brought to the home, it had gas pumps before, and now it lay abandoned. The main branch of the family had long since moved away. The windows lay broken. The front door was ajar, with the lock having been broken, and wild animals had entered to make the lower levels their den. Animals were of no use to me. Too small, and their flavor provided nothing worthwhile. A breath, and the energy was gone. I floated up the staircase I had once come through up to the bed. An old mattress on the floor, with the once expensive furniture covered in a layer of dust. A broken mirror on top of a vanity, and I saw the sleeping person. A collection of stolen wallets and phone lying by their side. A young man covered in open sores he repeatedly scratched at while he slept. Twitching, and his mind addled by stimulants and isolation. He hadn't slept in days. A thick coating of sweat covered his shirtless body and his dirty track pants. If I had not fed, another being would have. I appeared above him, clutching my fingers into his chest, and in his eyes, I saw my reflection. That of an elderly man, a filthy beard hanging from my chin with pieces of rotten food clinging to it, and a strong aroma of alcohol and stale BO. A memory of a terrifying night. I fed, left him sobbing without sound, writhing in agony, and it was time for me to step back before nothing was taken. He was broken long before I came to pick off the pieces. The home attracted similar people who were down on their luck or deeply troubled. People who battled addictions, escaping one struggle or another, and found themselves without a permanent address. Time had taken its toll. While not nourishing, I could travel from room to room late at night to taste the differing fear and suffering of all the individuals, residing in the walls during the daytime despite the large basement falling to a lack of maintenance. The turnarounds of people here was extreme. Some would pass on their own, others would simply leave. People would break in with cameras, and while they sensed it wasn't safe, they never dared to sleep here. The monotony of life was growing tiresome. No challenge, no fight left inside them. More people can see me now. Has there been a change in human biochemistry? An acceptance of the unknown? Or perhaps there are greater evils in the world now? I wanted to wish myself out of existence, all until I stumbled on your room, and boy, am I going to feed tonight. I hope you enjoyed this story today. So I do have a question. Have you ever had sleep paralysis? Or do you know someone who has? Let me know your story in the comment section down below. If you're new here, why not like, comment, and subscribe? Don't forget to hit the bell. Oh yeah, and stab the like button. If you would like more content and would like to support my work, consider becoming one of my beloved channel members or Patreon supporters. Look at them! Look at all these amazing people! Thank you so much. My social media linky-loos are down below. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.